Սիրիտաց հիմնադրամը շարունակում է իր հանդիպումների շարքը, որը կոչվում է 100 հարցերի պատասխան, եւ մենք այսօր մեծ հաճույքով ներկայացնում ենք Հայաստանում Միացյալ Նահանգների նախկին դեսպան Զոն Էվանսին։ Շնորհակալություն, պարոն Էվանս. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Դուք հիշում եք, որ մեր ընթացակարգը հետևյալն էր։ Ես տալիս եմ 2 հարց, այնուհետև մեր հարգարժան հյուրին մենք խնդրում ենք, որ նա կանգնի ամբիոնի մոտ եւ պատասխանի ձեր հարցերին, ինչպես նաեւ այն հարցերին, որոնք ստացել է Սիվիլիտաց հիմնադրամը ինտերնետի միջոցով։ Հարցերը բավականին հետաքրքիր են, ես կաշխատեմ բոլոր այդ հարցերը հնչեցնեմ։ Եվ եւս մի զգուշացում, որ մի հարցը 6 հարց իր մեջ չպարունակի, հենց որ ես տեսնեմ, որ մի հարցը պարունակում է իր մեջ այլ հարցեր, ես շատ դաժան ձևով կընդհատեմ հարց տվողին, ով էլ նա լինի, անկախ ուրեմն տարիքից, սեռից եւ զբաղեցրած դիրքից։ Եվս մեկ անգամ շնորհակալություն, որ այսօր համաձայնվել եք մասնակցել այս հանդիպմանը։ Ես գիտեմ, որ ցեղասպանության եւ Wikileaks-ի մասին մեր հարգարժան հյուրերը անպայման հարցեր կտան, դրա համար ես դրա մասին ձեզ չեմ հարցնի։ Բայց ես կհարցնեմ մի հարց, որը ինձ անձնապես շատ է հուզում։ Ամերիկյան դիվանագիտությունը ընդհանրապես մեծ ճիքեր է գործադրել, որպեսզի Հայաստանի եւ Թուրքիայի միջև ստորագրվեն արձանագրություններ։ Այդ գործընթացին այս կամ այն ձևով ենթադրում եմ նաեւ դուք եք մասնակցել։ Արդյոք կանխատեսելի չէր այն ընթացքը, որը այդ արձանագրությունները ստացան եւ այն վիճակը, որը մենք այսօր ունենք։ Եվ եթե կանխատեսելի էր, արդյոք իմաստ ուներ խրվել մի գործընթացի մեջ, որը ի սկզբանե պետք է գնալ դեպի տապալում։
Բարև ձեզ, Տիկնակ եւ Պարոնակ. It's very nice to be here. Let me be very direct in answering your question. It seems to me that if everyone had thought that this process was not going to work, no one would have begun it. The process began long before there was very much American or Swiss involvement. There are 2 schools of thought on how to solve these kinds of complicated problems. My own view is that it is wiser to take small steps, one by one. Diplomacy, like politics, is the art of the possible. And I think what happened here, for reasons that are complex on both sides, is that too much was piled on the plate. It would have been easier and better, in my view, to take these issues singly. I mean, it's just as if a hungry man sits down to a plate piled with food. Even if he's hungry, he won't eat it all. But if he takes one grape at a time, he will get there.
Այստեղից եւս մի հարց բնականաբար պիտի առաջանա։ Հետևաբար մենք հասել ենք մի վիճակի, երբ որ մարդը շատ բան է կերել եւ հիմա նրա փորը ցավում է։ Հիմա մենք պետք է գնանք հետ, որպեսզի ձեր ասած քայլ առ քայլ նորից առաջ գնանք։ Թե մենք պետք է սպասենք, մինչեւ այդ մարդը նորից սովածանա։
Well, I do think that the original choice makes a difference, and the fact that both sides seemed to want to include parliamentary ratification as part of the process has to be taken into account now. In diplomacy, as in life, you can't go back to square one. I mean, you can't step into the same river twice. I think the little signal that we've perceived in the last few days, in which the protocols have been again put on the agenda of the Turkish Grand National Assembly, should not be overlooked. I also think it should not be overinterpreted. And I do think, I've said consistently, that I believe the intentions were good, the direction was right. I think there were some failures in execution, probably on both sides. But I think ultimately there's no other way than to keep working on this problem and hope that it gets Armenia and Turkey to a better place.
Եթե դա լիներ իմ հարցազրույցը, ես բնականաբար կշարունակեի այս թեմայով ձեզ հարցեր տալ, բայց քանի որ մենք ունենք բազմաթիվ հարցեր ներկաների, ես այս թեման առայժմ դադարեցնում եմ եւ մի հարց եմ ուզում տալ, որը տվել է նաեւ ինտերնետով Civitas-ի ուրեմն user-ներից մեկը, նա հարցրել է. «Պարոն դեսպան, խնդրում եմ գնահատել 1-ից 10, ուրեմն սանդղակով ժողովրդավարության աստիճանը Հայաստանում։ 1 ամենավատն է, 10 ամենալավն է»։
I would be happy to address that. In terms, though, that are based on the criteria used by the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And what I will do in the interest of time is give a website. It's mcc.gov, G-O-V. The Millennium Challenge Compact began exactly 5 years ago when I was just leaving Armenia, and the compact ends today. And tonight on your first channel there will be coverage of this Millennium Challenge Compact, which I think all of you know has to do with trying to reduce rural poverty through a combination of repairing the irrigation system and building roads. Now, as most of you also know, the Millennium Challenge Board has frozen the last tranche of funding at one of its meetings in 2009, and that funding did not come back. Now, there are 3 groups of criteria that are used. In 2 of the groups, Armenia was doing very well, investing in people, and one of the other groups having to do with economic effectiveness, economic freedom. But it was in the group which we call a group of indicators, 6 indicators, which we refer to as ruling justly. And in that category, Armenia fell down in the years after 2006. And if my memory serves correctly, I'll give this to you not in terms of 1 to 10, but in 1 to 100. Mm-hmm. I think the percentile was 26. 26% of the peer group, which is a group of more than 20 countries in a similar stage of development. So if you're really interested in this question, go to the website. Of course, all ratings are to some extent subjective, but Freedom House, the World Bank, Brookings Institution have all looked very carefully and hopefully with a good degree of objectivity at these questions. They look at all countries in the world, and alas, Armenia has not done well in that category. So I invite everybody here to look at that.
2.6.
No, 26 out of 100.
Okay. Thank you.
Or 2.6 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go.
Thank you. You can stay on the podium. Մի հարց, որը վերաբերում է Լեռնային Ղարաբաղի Հանրապետության Լեռնային Ղարաբաղի կոնֆլիկտին վերաբերող խնդրին, որ համաձայն եք դուք արդյոք, մոտավորապես այդպիսին է հարցը, որ Լեռնային Ղարաբաղի հարցի կարգավորումը Մինսկի խմբի կողմից դա ըստ էության պայքար է Ռուսաստանի եւ Միացյալ Նահանգների միջև։
No, I don't accept that in the least. To my certain knowledge, the cooperation between the 3 mediating powers, France, Russia, and the United States, has been at all times very good, and it's sometimes superb. In fact, that continues with our new mediator, Robert Bradke.
Ambassador Evans, it's really nice to see you again in Armenia, especially for Armenian mass media who remember how cooperative you were with us. My question is, 2 days ago, unfortunately I was not present at the event 2 days ago, it was with us. You said that the life is improving in Armenia as a new, I don't know, cars, shops, etc. are opened in Armenia. But there is an opinion that they all belongs also the same group of people. No new people there. Do you think that from this point of view, this is a sign of improvement of the people, life of the people here in Armenia? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can tell you that having been away for 5 years, I see a tremendous change in the face of this city. Lots of new shops, lots of buildings that have been repaired, lots of signs of economic activity. But this is just my subjective view. Again, I suggest to look at the indicators of the World Bank and Brookings Institution in the economic section of the Millennium Challenge report and website, because it's precisely in the economic area where Armenia is showing above 50%. They're ahead of many other competitors, and we know from the growth rates that Armenia, except in 2008 when there was a large downturn, Armenia has basically been growing very nicely. Now, on the question of who owns what, that's difficult to tell even in the United States sometimes. I don't know. Are some of these big companies listed publicly or are they privately held? I can't tell you that. But if they are giving jobs, I would say that's the important thing for most young Armenians today, as also for Americans, I might add.
Thank you. Հարց ինտերնետից, պարոն Էվանս, որևէ մեկը ձեզ հարցրել է մամուլից, արդյոք դուք իրականում օգնել եք պարոն Քոչարյանին իր նախընտրական կամպանիայում?
Nobody asked me, but I think they're asking me now. And the answer is no.
Պարոն Էվանս, հետևում եք տարածաշրջանում շահեր ունեցող Ռուսաստանում գործընթացներին եւ երևի տեսակ պայմանավորվածությունների մասին նախագահի եւ վարչապետի խոսքը Եդինայա Ռասիայում, ինչպես եք վերաբերվում այդպիսի փոխհատուցումների վերաբերյալ պայմանավորվածություններին եւ ասենք որպես տարածաշրջանի մեծ խաղացող այդ ազդեցությունները ինչպես կգնահատեք?
I'm happy to tell you that I have been predicting for probably 3 years that there would be a rokirovka. The Russians, you as chess players, you Armenians, perfectly understand what this maneuver is. Americans are not, except for Bobby Fischer, we are not chess players, so it's very strange for us. But the only question, when you do this rokirovka, it can go either to the right or to the left. And so I think we see what we see. I might just add that when I was U.S. Consul General in St. Petersburg, I knew both Mr. Putin and Mr. Medvedev, and neither one of them at that time had any imagination that they would be leading Yedinaya Rossiya or the Russian Federation. But it's a team from St. Petersburg.
Վերջին իրադարձության վերջին հանդիպման ժամանակ դուք խոսում եք ազնիվ դիվանագիտության մասին, դիվանագիտության մեջ ազնվության մասին, եւ կարելի է արդյոք ասել, որ 1915 թվականի իրադարձությունները ցեղասպանություն կոչելը ազնվություն է եւ հետեւաբար անկեղծություն է եւ հետեւաբար նրանք ովքեր այդպես չեն կոչում, օրինակ Օբաման, նրանք անկեղծ չեն.
I gave a talk on Saturday under the aegis of Civilitas, and it was a TEDx talk. That talk about honesty and diplomacy should be uploaded to the TED.com site before too long. And any of you who are interested in the subject, I invite you to listen to that talk. I was faced in 2005 in the United States with a dilemma, either to stick to the agreed talking points about the events of 1915, which I felt were deeply misleading. Not completely untrue, but deeply misleading. Or, before an academic audience at UCLA, to be honest about what I knew about history and knew about the subject of genocide. And this was a dilemma. It was a choice. It was not a slip of the tongue. I decided there was no other choice for me than to talk honestly about it, and I don't regret that. I did not make it a major issue in my work here, but I felt as a state employee, that is a government employee, I had no business to go out in front of the taxpayers who pay my salary and mislead them about a clear case in history. So that's basically why I made that decision.
Ժողովրդորաթերթ անուշ դաշտենց պարոն դեսպան ուրեմն Վիկիլիքսյան հայկական մամուլի տեսությունը նաև եթե չեմ սխալվում ձեր անունը կար դուք այսպես սրտատրոփ սպասել եք ձեր անվանը թե ինչ կարող է լինել եւ նաև ինչ եք կարծում մեր պաշտոնյաները բացատրում են որ այդ գնահատականները որ երբեմն շատ կոպիտ լինում են դրանք ուղղակի ամերիկյան պաշտոնյաների սուբյեկտիվ ընկալումներ են դուք կարծում եք դրանք սուբյեկտիվ ընկալումներ են թե այնուամենայնիվ օբյեկտիվ գնահատականներ մեր իշխանությունների վերաբերյալ
There are a couple of things that need to be said. First of all, it is simply a tradition that diplomatic cables are signed by the ambassador. So it's nothing personal, it's simply the ambassador's name appears, or the charge d'affaires' name appears at the bottom of every telegram. I would also like to point out that it is our practice in diplomatic correspondence to report the facts in one section of the telegram, very clearly marked as such, and then to provide any analysis or comment, not to mix them together. This is also the practice in good journalistic writing, not to invest the facts also with questionable opinion. I have had no sleepless nights because of WikiLeaks. We did our work. I think, of course, I deplore the lapse of confidentiality represented by WikiLeaks because I do believe that states have the right to communicate with each other in confidence, just as family members have a right to communicate in confidence. But since this has happened, I actually do see something healthy for the publics of all countries to see what diplomats are really doing, to see that we are observing the same phenomena that journalists and political analysts are observing. We're trying to make sense of things. We're sometimes delivering tough messages, sometimes trying to solve problems. So, in a sense, I think this opening the curtain to see what is happening in diplomacy has been a very healthy thing for the world.
Վերջերս Գերմանիայի դեսպանը Հայաստանում հարցականի տակ դրեց 94-97 թվականի լեգիտիմությունը ընտրությունների նկատի ունի խորհրդանական եւ նախագահական ընտրությունները մասնավորապես 95-96 թվականների դուք ունեք գնահատականներ այդ իրավիճակի այդ ընտրությունների եւ կարող եք դա բարձրաձայնել
I was not here, of course, at that time. There are reports of the international observers that were done then, but I would not choose to contradict what the German ambassador said yesterday.
Armina Dorobinyan, Armenian Assembly of America. Mr. Evans, as a high experienced diplomat, what's your opinion about the Armenian lobby in the United States? the significance of their work in general and the work of Armenian Assembly of America in particular?
Of course, we in the United States, I think, more or less invented lobbying. Maybe we should call that the third oldest profession. Diplomats, of course, being the second. There's Armenian Americans, like every other group in the United States, have the perfect right to make their political views known. What I have found back in the United States since being here in Armenia is that there's a wide range of opinion among Armenian Americans, depending on so many factors, when their families came to America, under what circumstances, and which church they go to, and so on and so forth. I have to tell you that I feel that one of the great rewards of my diplomatic service here has been to meet a lot of these people who are interesting and engaged and charming and exasperating all at once. I think, the lobbying efforts go up and down depending on what the current issues are. And I think the Assembly in particular has been quite effective in lobbying for assistance numbers which have surprised expert expectations. I mean, I just saw in the papers that the figure of 40 million this year is holding, and that's pretty good considering the general downward trend. Now, the other big lobbying establishment is, of course, the Armenian National Council. They have a slightly different approach, but they are very alert to issues that need to be raised, and they have a good, solid operation. So, I think this is part of democracy. I myself welcome it. I think they have every right to do this as long as they don't break the law.
Mr. Evans, Carolina, ինտերնետով, ասում եմ, ես երբ որ ես նորություններ եմ լսում Միացյալ Նահանգների մասին, ես զարմանում եմ, ուշադրություն եմ դարձնում, թե որքան շատ է այնտեղ քաղաքական կոռուպցիան։ Ձեր կարծիքով, արդյոք իրականում կոռուպցիայի մակարդակը բոլոր երկրներում ըստ էության նույնը չէ, ինչպես մեծ երկրներում, ինչպիսին Միացյալ Նահանգներն են, եւ այդպես էլ փոքր երկրներում, ինչպիսին Հայաստանն է։
No, I don't think the level of corruption is the same, and I don't think we should talk just about the United States and Armenia. There are a lot of factors, and there are a lot of different kinds of corruption. Now, I noticed in the hall of the hotel today that the group Transparency International is having some kind of a seminar today. There are people who are very expert at analyzing these issues. But just to take a second and distinguish between high-level political corruption and the kind of street-level corruption that you might encounter when you park your car. They're very different things. And then in the middle, there might be the kind of corruption that comes with an insufficiency of places in a school, for example. Very often, situations that lead to corruption have to do with inadequate supply of a good. And that could be places in kindergarten, it could be places in university, it could be medicines that are supposed to be theoretically free, but for which there is greater demand than the supply will satisfy. That creates a situation where the person in control of the supply may try to profit from the excess demand. That's simple economics. I will say this. In the United States, I think the fact that almost all members of the U.S. Senate have assets well over $1 million, the fact that campaign contributions now are at their highest level ever due to various factors, including a Supreme Court decision, these factors tend to erode the quality of American democracy. And a lot of people are concerned about it. A lot of people are trying to think what we can do about it. So on that count, I think we have a lot of work to do. As I've said elsewhere, no democracy is perfect. We have to keep working at this. And I would add that, in my view, the answer to bad mafias is to create good mafias.
Hello, I'm Navarz Nunu, graduate of Yerevan State Linguistic University. We met 2 days ago.
Yes.
Again, and now nice to meet you. My question concerns the recognition of genocide by the U.S., and I would like to know your opinion on two viewpoints that exist. One is that they are saying the U.S. government doesn't want to spoil its relations with Turkey by recognizing the Armenian genocide. The second viewpoint is that many of their congressmen and senators have a Jewish ancestry, Jewish origins, and they are the ones who stop the progress of recognizing the Armenian genocide, as they want the Holocaust to be the only genocide of the 21st century. Thank you very much.
I think you meant to say 20th century, but I understood.
Yes.
Looking first at the second part of your question, I think that is an overdrawn conclusion. I don't think first of all, the House has passed some form of a genocide resolution more than once in the past. And I would remind you that in 2010, the chairman of the committee that voted the resolution out of committee was the chairman was Tom Lantos, the only Holocaust survivor to serve in the U.S. Congress. So I don't think that is the concern. Now, reverting to the first part of your question, it is clear that the United States enjoys not only good relations but an alliance relationship with Turkey, and has done since 1952. In 1951, the United States, in writing at The Hague, in a legal submission, clearly stated that it believed that the events of 1915 constituted there was even a qualifying word, an overriding example of genocide, or that is a prime example of genocide. By 1952, Turkey was in the NATO alliance. We were in the Cold War, and there was great attention to Turkey's preferences in this. Jumping ahead, I think the important thing is this growing internal discussion that is taking place in Turkey. Whether Uruguay or the United States or some other country's parliaments recognize the genocide in one way or another, in these words or those words, is not the main thing. The main thing is what the Turkish people believe about their own history. And I remember here in 2005 when Minister Özkanyan invited all the ambassadors to a conference on the 90th anniversary of the genocide. I was instructed not to attend by my government. I sent my wife, and she sat in the front row. And that evening at Dolmama, I happened to run into Hrant Dink and a couple of other, Taner Akçam and Professor Bilge from Istanbul, and we talked about this problem, and they all agreed that most Turks do not know their own history in the great masses. But what is changing is that, as I understand, since 1999, no one in Turkey has gone to prison for for using the word genocide. There have been cases raised, including against Orhan Pamuk, and there was the tragedy of Hrant Dink's death. But the fact of the matter is that this year, as I understand, there were 4 commemorations of the genocide that took place April 24th. And this is a massive change. It's not fast enough, I think. It's been a very long time. It's been 95 years. But what is ultimately crucial is the Turkish recognition of what happened. And that is with the whole context. That's what really matters, and it needs to be addressed in due course.
Thank you. Հաջորդ հարցը նույն թեմայով է, կարծես թե այս հարցի շարունակությունն է։ 2007 թվականին New York Times-ում դուք գրեցիք, որ Hrant Dinki սպանությունը դա ազդանշան է, դա ուժեղ քամի է, որը փչում է նրանց դեմ, ովքեր ուզում են ճանաչեն 1915 թվականի հայերի ցեղասպանությունը։ Ձեր կարծիքով ինչ է կանգնեցնում պաշտոնական Անկարային այդ ճանապարհից ներսի դիմադրությունը, ներսի անդիմությունը այդ հարցին, թե նրանք վախենում են բացել Պանդորայի արկղը։
An American writer once said that a great deal of intelligence can be invested in ignorance when the need for illusion is deep. I think in the years since Ataturk founded the Turkish Republic, there was a perceived need to have a national myth, to cover up certain inconvenient facts about how the Turkish Republic emerged from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. There is also a fear, no doubt, of the consequences of reckoning with that history. Now, our president, President Obama, has been very forthright when on his first trip to Europe as president, he went to Ankara, to the Grand National Assembly, and talked about the importance of facing history. And he made it clear during that trip that his views on the issue were a matter of record and that he had not changed his view. No one could have mistaken what he meant by that, and I think no Turk listening was in any way misled. They understood what he was saying. I think the Western media probably missed it, but not for the first time. So this is a very difficult issue. I would say this. I think looking at the record of reparations paid to victims of the Holocaust, some people imagine that Holocaust victims were getting rich from payments by Germany and Austria. It's not true. The average payment to Holocaust victims was less than $10,000 per person. And it did not come from the courts. It came because the United States pushed hard diplomatically on Germany and Austria in particular to get some kind of settlement. So I think those who imagine that there are great riches to be had from the moment that Turkey comes to grips with its history are likely to be disappointed. Now there are some specific cases where there might be a possibility to sue in the courts of California, as is being done, or in some other court. But I would also note that there is, to my knowledge, only one court to which Turkey may be summoned without her consent, and that is the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. So the idea that there is going to be some judicial redress for the genocide, I think, is a phantom. I think what is important is that Turkey comes to an understanding of having done a wrong to a portion of its citizens. As Ataturk said, in the famous interview, was it in 1926, I think, in Los Angeles. He blamed the Young Turks for what they had done to, as he said, our Christian subjects. So I think that is the way forward. It is through understanding and acceptance in Turkey, and then let us hope that Turkey will see fit to try to make right this terrible wrong.
Շրջադարձ կուսակցության նախագահ, խնդրում եմ ասել Ղոնախչյան Սիմոն, խնդրում եմ ասել, որ դեպքերում են, որ անազնիվ անարդար ընտրությունները Միացյալ Նահանգների կողմից կորակվեն որպես այդպիսին, որպես անարդար.
You know, we were just talking at lunch today about the concept of free and fair elections. There are two things here. The mechanics of elections, the counting the votes, registering and running the elections, that's what constitutes a free election, if that's done honestly. There's also the question of whether an election is fair in the sense that in the months before the election, the media have been open, the people have had a right to register, have a right to express their opinions in the press, and everything that goes with creating the conditions for then, on election day, an honest election. Both of these conditions need to be fulfilled, and that's why the international monitors normally arrive with a long-term team to look at the fairness of the environment, and then they come with a lot of people on the last day or so for the election itself. Now, I very much think that these monitoring teams are useful. They are international. They are not pushing the agenda of one side or the other. I think their reports are very carefully written. Sometimes they have big disagreements among themselves, but they are important, and I hope that in the next elections there will be adequate monitoring here. There are problems in elections everywhere. We had problems in the state of Florida not so long ago, and in Chicago they used to say, vote early and vote often. So, you know, this is not, bad elections are not the monopoly of any one group of countries. But what I would say is this, that good elections give governments legitimacy. And governments should want to run good elections in order to have the legitimacy that comes with them.
Մի հարց Հրանտ Գադարյանը, մի խոսքով, մի user Civitas-ի նա այսպես հասկացավ LA Times-ին տված ձեր հարցազրույցը, դուք ասում եք, որ Թուրքիան շատ կարևոր է որպես Միացյալ Նահանգների դաշնակից եւ Հայաստանը իր, այսպես հասկացավ նրա ինտերպրետացիան է հավանաբար, Հայաստանը իր 3 առավելագույնը 3 միլիոն բնակչով իր քաշով չի կարող համեմատվել Թուրքիայի հետ։ Արդյոք ճիշտ է հասկացել այդ user-ը, այդ ընթերցողը ձեր ասածները։
I remember that interview probably it was 4 years ago. Maybe I was a little bit harsh, but the facts are still facts that Turkey is a country of 72 million approximately. It's 15th or 16th in the world, just after Sweden in gross national product. Armenia is somewhere around 3 million population with a much smaller economy. In fact, I think one estimate was that Turkey's economy is about 53 times the size of Armenia. Now, that's a couple of years old. It may have changed. Size is not everything. And it also can be, two things can be said. An alert dwarf is stronger than a sleeping giant. That's one thing. And the other thing is that Armenia does have a kind of moral authority in issues the kinds of which we've just been discussing. So I don't think one can make simply a what would you call it, a scientific evaluation. There are other factors at work, and I don't think Armenia should be in any way constrained by her small size. There are some advantages to being smaller and to being nimble, being able to seize an opportunity, being able to use the internet effectively. So size is not particularly in our age, when so much is a question of good governance, people being trained, investing in one's own people. These are important factors. Land mass is not so important as it used to be.
Online newspaper, thank you. My question is so that since 2006 there wasn't any official statement about why you lost your position in Armenia, because of using G word or not. It was mainly Armenian opinion and Armenians' conclusion. So after 5 years, can you say yes, it was because I used G word?
My temptation is to say wait and read my book. But since my book won't be out for a while, I'll just briefly say this, that when I talked truthfully about the history in 2005 in California, I knew that there would be negative consequences for me. But I didn't know whether they would chop off my head or maybe they would slap me on the wrist. And in the end, it was something in between. I was not removed immediately. I stayed another 18 months here. And it was only when President Bush named my successor that it was clear it was time for me to go home. But I was not fired, and I'm receiving, for what it's worth, my pension.
Մարդիկ եմ լրատվական կայքեջ Լիաննա Ներսիսյան, պարոն Էվանս, կխնդրեի պատասխանեք հետևյալ հարցին, որն է հայաստանյան այցի ձեր հիմնական նպատակը եւ որքան եք մնալու Հայաստանում, քանի որ մամուլում ակտիվ լուրեր են շրջանառվում այն մասին, որ դուք Հայաստան եք հրավիրվել Վարդան Օսկանյանի հրավերով, որպեսզի նախընտրական պայքարում օժանդակեք Ռոբերտ Քոչարյանի թեկնածությունը, ակտիվացնեք տարածաշրջանային կապերը եւ նմանատիպ տեսակետներ։
As is so often the case, the truth is much simpler than the rumors. I have indeed been invited here by Civilitas. I'm very grateful for the invitation. It was most timely, and I'm deeply grateful. I think Civilitas, whatever happens, I think Civilitas is doing some very good work, the work that needs to be done from everything I've seen. I think the CivilNet TV is a great innovation. I think there needs to be more discussion, public discussion of issues. And so I am here with no apologies and with no other agenda.
Հակոբ Ղավազյան, իրավագետ, իմ հարցը վերաբերում է Միացյալ Նահանգներում սեպտեմբերի 15-ի վերաբերյալ 11-ի վերաբերյալ դեպքերին, ինչ փուլում է գտնվում հետաքննությունը եւ ինչպիսի վերջնական վարկած է ձևավորվել հարձակման։
Well, 99% of people in the United States believe they understand very well what happened on that day. I know there are some people claiming that this or that insidious force has been involved. But I think we all understand exactly what happened on September 11th, and it is as we read about it in the papers and so on. There have been a number of reports. This was basically a strike against the United States by Al-Qaeda. It was perhaps more deadly because we didn't understand the power of burning jet fuel, which burns at a very high temperature, the power of that fuel to melt the superstructure of tall buildings. But I don't for a second subscribe to any of the unusual explanations, which are really falsifications.
Եկեք շնորհակալություն հայտնենք դեսպան Էվանսին շատ հետաքրքիր պատասխանների համար։
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. Thank you.